Hey, it's Jacob. Welcome to this new video. Today, I want to talk about Python scripting basics, the 5 mistakes that slow you down. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what not to do and why you need to stop doing that. And I'll illustrate every single mistake with examples. Plus, I'll tell you what goes wrong when you make those mistakes. Maybe in the past, you've learned Python command lines and you tried to use them and apply them for something specific, but you realized that you forgot about a few use cases, and because of it, nothing worked. And you realized that you had actually wasted your time doing that. Or maybe you've tried to write a Python script before and you started to write code, and after a while you realized that the size of your file was expanding so much that you got lost. You felt overwhelmed and stuck. Or maybe you've tried in the past to create Python scripts for a specific need, but you realized that every time you did that, something went wrong. And it felt like it never really works well for you specifically. It feels unfair. Well, you just need to practice. That's what you hear everywhere, or you just need more experience. And the problem is I saw a lot of people with tons of experience with those same issues. So is it that you just need more practice, or is it that you need to look at the mistakes you're doing specifically and correct them and not make them anymore? Well, quite frankly, I think it's the latter. I don't think it is a lack of experience. So if you still have those issues and you thought they'd go away with experience and with practice, but they don't think you're not good enough, because the truth is, it's just bad advice. So what you really need is a conscious knowledge of the mistakes you make so that you can course correct and stop making them. It sounds obvious in retrospect. I mean, if you do boxing and your guard is wrong, well, if you don't know that and you don't work on it, it's not gonna get any better. So let me tell you the first mistake that people are making when they are getting started with Python scripting. Scripting before mastering the process. For example, let's say you wanna create an Excel report based on external data. Well, let's say you want to create a Python script that will generate it for you. So if you do that and you don't master the process, you might realize at the end of your script that you might have made a few assumptions. One of the assumptions might be you thought that the location of the data that you wanted to extract it from to create your Excel report was always the same, or the format of that data was always the same. And the reality is, those things vary throughout time, meaning that if you're creating a script to generate Excel files, you probably are going to generate a lot of them. But throughout all those different files you're going to generate, the location of those things are going to vary, or the format of those things are going to vary. So the 3 main reasons why scripting before mastering the process doesn't work is because 1, reality is always more complex than you think. 2, there are always things we don't know about the process if we don't master it. And 3, the difficult part is not always where we think. For example, for you, maybe the difficult part of generating Excel report lies in identifying what the location of the data is in a reliable way. Mistake number 2, learning to program and then applying what you learned. This might seem natural to do it that way, but it's actually a mistake. Let me explain. For example, let's say you learn to write a text file in Python. This is very easy to learn, right? And your boss asks you to write a report about X, Y, and Z. Then you think about creating a script that generates a report in a text file because you just learned to do that in Python. Now, what's the problem with that approach? Well, the problem is no one cares about the text file. They want a Word file for the report. In this example, I talk about a Word document, but that could have been an Excel report. The point is, you end up doing things that no one cares about and then rationalize that people should use it. And that's not the real world. That's the reason why learning to program and then applying what you learned doesn't actually work in the real world, although that's what it's being taught at school. Mistake number 3, simplifying the problem in the hope of solving it later. For example, you want to organize the files in a folder. You want to create a Python script to do that for you. So you make the assumption that the names of those files are formatted in a specific way. And the thinking process behind this is, I will add on to that script so that it can deal with more formats later. What is the problem with this particular approach? You can solve the problem, but again, you simplified it to the point where no one cares about it anymore. You're cutting corners here in a way that is not linked to reality. In the real world, with actual use cases, it will never work. No one will have a use for it. And here, you can simplify the problem when you're scripting, but when you do it that way, the heart of the problem is not contained in the script. So what does that mean? It means it's not going to help you solve the problem later. Let me give you another example. If you want to create a software for self-driving cars and you assume that you know where everything is, well, this is the heart of the problem. Then the decision-making process of what to do with the car once you know where everything is not the heart of the problem. The heart of the problem is to know where things are. So why is this mistake so important? Because if you make this mistake, you will have the impression of moving forward when you are actually not. And why is this mistake so common? Because the heart of the problem is usually more difficult than the rest. So it's more comfortable to work around the problem because it feels like you're making progress until you realize that you've actually wasted your time, and then it becomes really uncomfortable. Fourth mistake, having messy code. This can consist of importing the same module more than once, or reading the same file more than once. This can be an Excel file or a text file or Word document, whatever it is. Or more generally, repeating yourself in the code and doing things more than once. And what will go wrong if you do that is the time it will take to keep building on your script will increase exponentially with the size of the script. Because the messier the code, the easier it's going to be to get lost in it. There is a limit to the amount of messy code that the human brain can deal with at once. When you are past that threshold, you are never going to want to go back and work on that script again. Fifth mistake, not having a naming convention. So let me give you a few examples of what naming conventions are. Here are examples of standard naming convention you can use right now. The most common ones I saw are the first one and the second one. Standard naming convention number 1, take every word of your variable and you separate those words with underscores. It's a very simple naming convention to understand. Here, my is a first word and variable is a second word, so you just add the underscore in between them and that's the name of your variable. The second naming convention is following this rule. The first letter of the first word of your variable is lowercase. Every first letter of every word after that is uppercase. If you take this example, my is the first word, so the first letter is lowercase, so my is lowercase, and the words after that will have their first letter uppercase, so variable is uppercase. If you add other words, it's going to be uppercase for the first letter also. Standard naming convention number 3, the first letter of every word is uppercase, and that's it. So what goes wrong if you don't do this? 1, you reduce the readability of your code. 2, searching for a variable becomes more difficult because you don't have a way to know the name of your variables for sure. 3, you increase the chances of repeating yourself because you're getting lost in your code. I mean, understanding your own code after a while is difficult enough as it is. If your naming convention is not consistent throughout the code, then it's going to be very easy to get lost in it. And you might think that some variables that you've actually defined in the code are not defined just because you can't find them. And what happens then? Well, you define another variable that is doing exactly the same thing, and then you're going to find that first variable, and you're going to ask yourself, what is that variable for? And you're not going to want to delete that variable because your software works, and you don't want to take that risk. When that starts happening, there is not a lot of time left before getting completely lost in your code. So now you know exactly what not to do, but what should you do instead? I know that it can be difficult to get started because you don't have a clear direction of what to do. And if you figure it out for yourself, it can take a lot of time. That's the reason why I created a free online course to help you avoid wasting your time and energy. You can click on the link in the description to get it. Have a great day and see you in the next video.